Hello everyone, happy Friday and welcome to the Mylio Photos coffee break. My name is Angela Andrieux and today we're going to be talking about linking, copying, or moving and which are the best ways to get media into your Mylio Photos library. We'll talk about some of the benefits of each and some of the considerations as you set things up. Now, as you go through this, you might take a look at your existing library and consider maybe you should have done something differently. I want to let you know that as we do this, these are kind of best practices, but they are not they're not like firm, you did something correct or incorrect. There's not any one of these options is not an incorrect way to do it, but some might be better for different circumstances. So please don't feel like you have to start over if you didn't do something in the absolute best way. We can talk through ways to get things more organized once you have your media into Mylio Photos. So there's lots of different things we can discuss today, but we're going to go ahead and go through the presentation and then we'll have time for open Q&A after. I see that there's already a couple of questions in the chat, which is awesome, and we will get to those after the presentation. Before we jump in, I do want to let you know that we have live Q&A every Tuesday and Thursday. That's at 11:30 a.m. Pacific. These are just open Q&A sessions. You can come, you can ask me anything, and topics range a wide gamut of subjects. You can come with questions about Mylio, photography, family history, organization, photo editing, photo gear, anything really within that realm is fair game, and I do my best to get those questions answered for you. And then every Friday we have these coffee breaks. As I mentioned today, we're talking about link, copy, or move. Next week, we're going to be talking about what's on your device and how to navigate sync policies in Mylio Photos. So essentially, it's going to be building on what we talk about today and giving you a deeper understanding of how to decide what is stored on every device in your Mylio Photos library. With that, let's go ahead and jump into the presentation and talk about linking, copying, and moving. So these are the different import options in Mylio Photos, and we're going to go through today why you might want to choose one or the other of these options as you add media. So let's go ahead and go through the agenda just so you know what we're going to cover. The first thing is we're going to differentiate between adding media versus adding a device. We'll discuss how every folder in Mylio Photos is a linked photo, or linked folder. Goodness, it's tripping over my words today. Every folder is a linked folder. We'll discuss what folders Mylio creates when you install it on your system. And then we'll go through the linking, copying, and moving, and the benefits of each one of those options and why you might want to consider them. So first up, adding media versus adding a device. This is something that I think a lot of people get confused with when they're first getting started with Mylio Photos. Because sometimes you think you want to add a device and that's just going to automatically add the media on that device. And that's not correct. So adding media is the process of adding pictures, videos, and documents to your Mylio Photos library, telling Mylio, this is where your media exists. This is what I want you to scan and import. So adding media is telling Mylio where stuff lives. When you add a device, this is telling Mylio where do you want your stuff stored. And that can be a computer, it can be an external drive, a NAS, cloud services, things like that. But it's essentially telling Mylio, here's a device, I want you to show this in the devices list, but it doesn't automatically import anything. Rather, it tells Mylio where to put stuff. What is synced to each device is controlled by those sync policies, which we're going to go into next week. But just to know that that's the difference between adding media and adding a device. So what we're going to talk about today is adding media. Adding a device is something different. So first off here, I want to let you know one thing that's really interesting with Mylio Photos that I think a lot of people kind of overlook is that every folder that you see in the folders view in Mylio Photos is technically a linked folder. What that means is Mylio Photos is watching that location for changes. Some of these folders are folders that Mylio created, and some of them are folders that you added, but Mylio is watching those. So Mylio Photos is a direct link to the folders in your file system. And anytime you import media into Mylio Photos, Mylio does not physically hold those photos. Instead, it's telling Mylio, watch this location. So that's what's happening with Mylio Photos. A lot of people get confused. They think when they import things into Mylio Photos that the application actually holds their pictures, and that is not true. It's actually just saying, here Mylio, this is where my media is located. So keep that in mind as we go through this process. And any folder that's in Mylio Photos is continuously monitored by the application for changes. So if Mylio Photos knows about a folder and you put a new picture into that folder, Mylio will scan and add that to the library. So just something kind of conceptually to keep in mind as we move through this discussion. All right. So the first thing we want to go into here is Mylio-created folders. And these are the folders that when you install Mylio Photos on your system, that Mylio automatically creates. So when you first get into the application, you're going to see the Mylio inbox and Mylio pictures folders. These are Mylio created. They are still folders that exist in your file system. They're going to be in your root folder in the Mylio system folder is what we call it. And that's going to be in the user directory on your computer. So they're actual folders that live on your hard drive. They're not anything hidden. So you can see here kind of an example. Here is the account one of the accounts on my computer. Here's that Mylio inbox. Here's that Mylio pictures. And those are exactly what's showing here inside of Mylio Photos. So Mylio automatically creates those folders. It also can create device-based folders, which if you connect a phone to Mylio Photos, let's say you add Mylio Photos to your iPhone or your Android phone, it's going to go ahead and give you the option to import media from those devices as well, pull them in from the camera roll or media library, and it's going to automatically create an Apple Photos or Android Photos folder. So those are also automatically created by Mylio Photos. And again, if you were looking in the file system, if they were connected, you would see those here as well. And then you're also going to have social media folders. If you choose to use Mylio Photos tools to import media from, say, Facebook or Flickr or something like that, Mylio will automatically create a folder for those imports as well. But the two we're going to really focus on today are going to be the Mylio inbox and the Mylio pictures. Another thing that I want to let you know with the Mylio inbox is this is also added as a shortcut to Windows Explorer and Mac OS Finder. And that makes it really easy if you have individual files around your system that you want to add to your library. You can just drag and drop them into that Mylio inbox folder in your system, and that will also get them into your Mylio Photos library. So the Mylio inbox is a great tool to know about, and it's just another folder here on your system. This little shortcut here under favorites is just a shortcut to this folder here inside of that root folder in your user directory. All right, so moving into linking a folder. This is going to be the first option when you go into add media on your computer. You're going to have the option to link, copy, or move. And linking is probably going to be the first thing that most people go for. What it does is it tells Mylio to watch the folder in its current location. So the folder and its contents will remain where they are, and Mylio does not move or duplicate those files. This is the best thing to do. It's really kind of, I would say that if you're just kind of testing the waters, linking a folder is a great idea. But if you're ready to commit to Mylio, it's best for media that's used by other applications. So let's say you also use Lightroom, and Lightroom is referencing that same directory of folders. You want to leave those where they are because if you move them, it's going to sever that connection to that other application. So if you are sharing those files with another app, doing link is the best option. You also want to consider if these folders are already organized exactly how you want them, you don't want Mylio to move them around, you can go ahead and link them. That's also a great thing. Now, some things to consider as you link a folder. The folder structure matters. So when you link a folder, everything inside of it, including all of the subfolders, are included in that link. It's not just linking the top level, it's linking everything down below that. Additionally, if you link a subfolder first, so let's say you have a photos folder and you go down and you want to just grab, last summer's vacation pictures. Let's say you link that summer vacation folder, and then later on you want to go back and add that top level because you decide you want everything in that directory. Well, Mylio is not going to let you do that because you linked a subfolder first. So you want to consider what file structure you want to see in Mylio before you start linking folders. So plan ahead and think about that before you link. Sometimes you just want to test the water and pull in a small folder, and there's nothing wrong with that, but understand that any other subfolders would have to be individually linked later on if you choose to do that, or you could remove that folder and then link that top level folder. That's something different. That's one of those questions where if you are looking at this a little bit farther on in your Mylio journey and you want to kind of reorganize how you did things, that's something we can discuss. A few other considerations for linked folders. So there is a default behavior for Mylio. If you link a folder, that folder is going to appear as it's attached to the main device that you added it from, even if it's stored on an external drive. The pro to doing it this way is that it is the fastest way to import and sync. It's going to give you kind of the best experience on that one device. The downside to doing it this way is that external drive, if you have another computer that you want to hook that external drive up, Mylio will not recognize it. So that's one thing to consider with the way most people go in and just link a folder. You see that folder listed underneath your main computer. The alternative is to first add the drive as a Mylio device. And so you're going to go into the dashboard devices, you're going to add that device and set it to catalog only if you don't want Mylio to store other things there. And the downside to this is it is a little slower than doing the default method for import and sync, but if you have to take that drive and you want to move it to another computer that you're also using with Mylio, Mylio will recognize that drive. So before we go any further, I want to jump into Mylio and we're going to do a little bit of hands-on exercise with this because I know this is a lot of information to digest and a lot of text on the screen, and that can be a little bit overwhelming. So let's jump over to Mylio. And right now I am in an account that has nothing in it. And I want to kind of go through some of the implications of adding media in different ways. Now, if you're just starting out, you might also see that guided import window. You can work from this, or I'm going to go ahead and just click I'm done and work from the add media up here. So I have a few test folders on an external drive and I want to add them in different ways so you guys can see what that looks like inside of Mylio. So let's go ahead and start with add media, and we're going to choose add media accessible from this device. And I'm going to navigate to an external hard drive that I have connected. And I've got a handful of folders here just for the purposes of demoing this. And we're going to start with testing to link. So this is the folder we're going to begin with. I'm going to choose this folder because it has some pictures that I want to have in my Mylio Photos library. I'm going to go ahead and click open. And this is where we come to, you have the option to link, copy, and move. We'll talk about copy and move here in a few minutes, but right now I'm going to just go to link. That tells it this is where these pictures live. I want Mylio to watch this new location. You can choose to apply a category to this if you like. You don't have to. And I'm going to go ahead and say link now. And this is doing it the default way. And it's going to show as attached to my primary computer, which is the device I'm using right now. If I go over to my folders view, and let me just make this a little bit smaller so we can see it. You can see that it's attached to my MacBook Pro 3, and there's that name of the folder called Test to Link. Now this folder is actually located on an external drive, but because I did not add that drive as a Mylio device, it's going to show it as attached to my computer. The benefit of this is it's very fast. The downside is if I want to take that external drive and plug it into another computer that is also using Mylio, Mylio will not recognize it. So that's something to keep in mind as you go through and set these things up. I'm going to do this a little bit differently, and I'm going to show you what it looks like to first add the device, and then we're going to link the folder. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to remove this folder, and you can just right click on it and say remove folder from catalog and confirm that you want to remove it. And that's fine. And that's going to go ahead and take that out of my Mylio Photos library. It doesn't move the folder from my hard drive. It doesn't delete any files. It just tells Mylio, don't watch this location anymore. One thing to think about is if you're thinking about reorganizing, you can do this with a top level folder, but consider that if you do remove a folder from your Mylio library, there are a few things that don't necessarily re-import. So if you've made any changes to your metadata, let's say you've made any visual edits, you've added titles, captions, keywords, things like that, those will all travel with your picture. So if you did those things and then you decide you want to remove it and re-add it in a different way, those things and your face tags will all re-import. If you went in and you started making events, you started adding albums or adding categories, those things do not transfer. So if you decide to remove a folder to re-add it in a different way, understand that you could lose your albums, events, and categories. All the rest of your metadata will re-import, but those three things, if you've spent a lot of time on that, you might want to consider a different option. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So instead of having it attached to my main computer, I want to make this its own Mylio device. So instead, what I'm going to do is go over here to the devices, choose devices, and up here at the top, I'm going to say add. And that's going to let me choose to add a new device. I'm going to select external drive, and I'm going to go down here to Extreme SSD, which is the device I want to select, and choose continue. Now by default, it's going to want to make it a vault. And this is going to tell Mylio to store everything in your library there. If this is a drive where you already have things organized and you don't want Mylio putting more stuff there, you just want it to recognize it as a device, what I would choose is custom setup and catalog only. Once you choose that, Mylio is going to put the catalog and the metadata there, but it's not going to start storing other full resolution images there. So for linking, especially if you don't want to use this as a place to store new media that you add, go ahead and choose catalog only. If you want to make this drive a place where Mylio stores other stuff that you start adding, you can go ahead and make it a vault. That's not a problem. But I'm going to go ahead and choose catalog only, and looks good. So that's going to go ahead and tell Mylio that this is now a device of its own. And now when I go up here to add media, and I go here, add media accessible from this device, and I grab that test to link folder. So I'm down on that same drive, grab that folder, and I say open. I'm going to say link them and link now. And then when I go back over here to my folders view, you're going to see it has actually the drive name. It's no longer attached to my Mac. It's now its own device. This method is a little bit slower, but it does let you take this drive to another computer that has Mylio running on it, and you're logged into the same account, Mylio will recognize it. So for most people, that is the method I recommend, but there are pros and cons to each way. So you have to kind of choose which is best for you, but making the drive its own Mylio device, to me, is the better option here. Okay, so let's jump back into the keynote here, and we're going to talk a bit about copying a folder. So what this does is it copies the folder and its contents to a folder that Mylio is already watching. I mentioned earlier that every folder in Mylio is actually a linked folder, which means it has a direct link to the file system. When you copy, it's taking the files from one location and making a duplicate copy and putting it into a folder that Mylio already knows about. By default, that's going to be that Mylio Pictures folder that I just showed you. And this is the best choice if you're trying to consolidate media. If you have stuff scattered across a bunch of different devices and you're just trying to get everything into one spot, copying is often the best choice. It has very flexible import options, meaning you can exclude duplicates, you can rename files, you can reorganize on import if you like, and you can add keywords. Additionally, it also creates a copy of that media. So a lot of times when people are coming to Mylio, their stuff is scattered, their stuff is not backed up, and by copying from that source into the Mylio Pictures folder, you're making a duplicate, which means you're basically creating a backup. So you have more than one copy of that file. So that can be a really good choice for a lot of people. So let me show you what that looks like here really quick. We're going to jump over here into Mylio, and I'm going to go up here to add media. And again, we're going to choose add media accessible from this device. And then I have a folder on that drive. So here's my Extreme SSD and a folder that I want to copy. So I'm going to go ahead and choose open. And instead of link, in this instance, I'm going to choose copy. And you'll notice here this dialog has a lot more options. So the first thing here is you can choose the destination. And by default, you're probably going to want to choose that Mylio Pictures folder. It's a folder that Mylio created. You can see it's currently empty. And I want Mylio to copy things from this folder into the Mylio Pictures folder. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. So you can see there's the source, my test to copy, and it's going to go into my Mylio Pictures folder. You can choose to add categories. One thing that's great about choosing this option is you can choose exclude suspected duplicates. So a lot of people, as you're consolidating media, you might already have duplicates on some devices. So maybe you tried to back up some things one time and it was incomplete, and you know things are just scattered and you might have something in more than one place. This cleans things up as you go, which is really pretty cool. If you want to, you can delete the files after adding them. That's essentially a move. Instead of copy, you choose move. We want to keep that off because otherwise it's going to delete that original version after it's copied into Mylio. And then under Show Advanced Settings, there's some additional things here. You can change the file names of the files you're importing. By default, it's going to keep them as they are. You can choose different folder organizations. So the two top options here are just to add the contents of the folder or add the selected folder as a new item. So you're just going to take that whole folder, copy that whole folder and put it into Mylio Pictures. Or you can take all the contents of that folder and put it into Mylio Pictures. I'm going to just add selected folder as new item. And you can add the folder name to keywords. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And if you had other keywords that applied to everything in this folder, you can go ahead and add those automatically. This just makes things more searchable and easier to find later on. It's completely optional. So right now I'm going to go ahead and click Copy Now. And I'm going to go back here to my folders view so we can see those just ended up here in my Mylio Pictures folder. And if I double click on that, there is that test to copy. And it's now living in that Mylio Pictures folder and is separate from that test to copy folder that's on that external drive. So now those pictures have been duplicated into my Mylio Pictures folder on my computer. So that's what it means to copy. Let's go ahead and go back over here and we'll talk a little bit about moving a folder. This is very, very similar to copying. The difference is that once that information is transferred into the Mylio Pictures folder, it will delete it from the original location. So no duplicate remains after the move is complete. Also good for consolidating, has those same flexible import options. The risks to consider is that the original files are permanently deleted after the move. And unless you have 2 Vault devices already set up with Mylio Photos for backing up and protecting your stuff, your media is not backed up. So by copying, you actually are creating another copy. So if something happens to one device or the other, you have now another copy. If you choose move, you don't have another backup unless you already have vaults set up with Mylio Photos. So in most cases, the 2 options you're really going to want to choose from are going to be link and copy. Typically, I don't suggest doing move just because of these risks down here. So for most people, most of the time, link and copy are going to be the 2 that you really want to consider. If you guys have any other questions, you guys can always reach me in the community. There is a group in the community called Mylio Photos Quick Questions. Please feel free to type in questions you have there. I answer those as I see them. I check it at least a couple of times a day. You're also welcome to come join the live Q&A on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those are at 11:30 a.m. Pacific. And again, any questions photography related are welcome. Organization, family history, anything in that realm, totally fair game. We have a really great time and you guys bring some amazing questions to those sessions. I love it. On Friday next week, we'll have another coffee break and we will talk about navigating sync policies. We touched a little bit on this today, but we're going to go a lot more in depth on that part of the application and just kind of continue on building what we talked about today. So I hope you guys will join me for that. And thank you again for joining me for today's session. I hope it was insightful and that you learned a little something and we'll have a better chance going forward getting your library set up the way you want it. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and we'll see you next time. Bye everyone.